Okay, we're live. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 81 of the Security Podcast, Security on the In30 Network. Today, we had a topic, and then we scrapped it when we heard over the weekend, I guess on Friday, the breach happened. But then on Sunday and Monday, we got the emails. Something happened at LastPass. And if you talk to anybody, and we've been getting a whole bunch of feedback in our day-to-day from people who don't know, saying, LastPass was hacked, we're all going to die. And the answer is no, take a step back. And we have Tom here, and I mean, I'm pretty well-versed at this myself. We have half an hour to explain to you why that is just patently not true, and LastPass is still awesome, and you should not worry and take a deep breath and go relax.
Right. This is just another case of people freaking out where they shouldn't be. So I'm here to tell you, don't panic. There's no reason to panic. And yes, this is a site on the internet. Hacks can happen. The good news is LastPass, when it comes to storing database credentials securely, passwords securely, storing the blob, storing all of the data they did everything exactly correct. Frankly, there's not really much they could have done better.
Well, first, let's start off, so not to make everyone listen for a full 30 minutes. You're 99% of the time, you're going to be okay. In this case, we're going to explain what happened, but you shouldn't be going crazy saying LastPass is awful or anything like that. You're probably okay.
Right. Yeah. Don't panic. You're fine. Unless you're using password as your master password for LastPass, you'll be okay. Just like they warn you several times when setting up your account for the first time, hey, use something big, long, complex. It's not going to get hit with a dictionary attack or something really common like, a really common Bible verse or song lyric. Make it something unique. And as long as you follow those rules, you don't have to panic. Everything's fine. And even if you did follow those rules, you've got time to change it before someone cracks it.
So just really quick, what happened? And we're going to post the two best articles that we found. One is specifically from LastPass, their notice that went out to everyone. And Ars Technica, which does awesome work, explaining a little more in depth or a little less in depth of why you really shouldn't worry. But they go through and they also explain it. But basically, on Friday afternoon, LastPass noticed some weird logs in their servers. Something happened. They're not 100% sure. They don't even know if anything was taken, but they're going to assume the worst. And the worst is all their encrypted blobs or the hashes were taken. And what that means is, remember, LastPass doesn't store anything on their servers, or they don't store anything unencrypted on their servers. So when you send something there, it's completely encrypted. They can't decrypt it. You can't pay them to decrypt it. You can't do anything. So whatever the people stole was just these blobs, if they stole anything. And now they have to sit there and brute force an attack. Did I say that right?
Kind of. So the encrypted blobs themselves weren't stolen. The password hashes were, which essentially means that, so just to recap how LastPass works, in case you guys haven't seen that episode, what happens is you've got a list of usernames, passwords, websites, and notes that is in LastPass. You've got a master password, something really cool and awesome, and it's the last password you'll ever use, hence the name. What LastPass does is in the browser, in the extension of the browser, or on the web page if you're using that, it'll take that plain text data, use that password and crunch it up, encrypt it, compress it, throw it back to LastPass's servers as sort of this mess of unreadable data. They don't take your master password and put it on their servers. They take a hash of your master password. So when you're logging in, they can run a function and say, oh yeah, the hash of what you gave me and the hash of what we have stored here match. So here's your encrypted blob. And the encrypted blob, again, doesn't contain any real data. You still have to use your master password to unlock it. And that unlocking and relocking happens on your local machine. It does not happen on LastPass's servers. Even in the case when you're logging into the LastPass website, it's happening in JavaScript in your browser on your computer. So none of the decryption takes place on the side of LastPass.
And we also discussed, hopefully we discussed in an earlier episode, that they're not just hashing it one way. They're not using an MD5 hash. They're doing something really secure. Then they're throwing random salt in it. And then what they're doing is they're hashing it a whole bunch of times in the process, which Tom will explain in a second. So this is not some sort of JavaScript hash library. They're doing a lot of work to make sure that this is super secure. So now that someone has it, they're going to have to recreate all of that. And basically, it's going to end up being a brute force attack. And if you have a very strong password, it's almost unattainable.
Right. So what poorly designed websites will do is they'll use a really fast hashing function, and they'll just use MD5 on the password and call it done. And the issue is MD5 is totally broken. You can you can get rainbow tables. So you can look up MD5 hashes and try to guess the plain text password from that. It's not something, good, not, insane security, but something like bcrypt or scrypt to store the passwords, which is perfectly fine. It's easy. It works. It's proven secure. They use something called a password-based key derivation function, which is basically a really fancy way of saying, hey, it's a cryptographically secure hash that's designed to be slow, is designed to be extendable, so you can throw a number at it, like a big number, and say, hey, you have to have this many rounds of the hash function, and it has to go through that whole sequence that many times to end up with the true hash. They were using, let me see the number here, because this is ridiculous.
They said that it's automatically 100,000 times.
Yeah, 100,000 times server side. So there is a user setting which you can turn on. You can set yourself, which the default, I believe, was 5,000. Yeah. So at the very least, if you have never touched your LastPass account, that's 105,000 rounds.
Let me correct you, because I did find this out. New LastPass users probably knew, as in once you heard the episode, was 5,000. If you were LastPass from way back in the day before they put this, it was defaulted to 0. And so I had to go in and manually change it to 5,000.
Yeah. And still, so if you set the user side to a crazy high number and the server side set to a crazy high number, you will notice when you log in. So you'll go to log in, and it'll take a couple seconds, maybe even longer than a couple seconds, to actually unlock your database, because it's got to take the key derivation function and run it that many times. And it's not a fast process. It's designed to be slow, because that'll stop brute force attacks or help dissuade them. But anyway, this is, as far as using PBKDF2, as far as using this secure hashing function goes in the industry, LastPass has done it completely correctly. This is some of the strongest hashing a company puts forth. It's really fantastic. It just goes to show that their engineering was really sound in putting this together.
And I mean, and then you keep on looking through their techniques. They have country restrictions. They have if it's, you can limit it to different, you disallow Tor network from accessing it. So if these are non-US based, if you're in the US, or if you're in one country and they're in another, and you disable the logins from those countries, I mean, that also adds a whole nother level of safety that is not necessarily outlined in the email or in the blog post, but it's still there.
Right. And even, even looking, just completely ignoring the good engineering. So LastPass, and we've heard of companies time and time again, they get hacked, and I guess we'll tell people maybe in 6 months, maybe never. No, LastPass said, oh, hey, something happened on our network. They figured out what it was. 3 days it took them to put together the blog post of, hey, this happened. this is what we're doing about it. This is what you can do about it. And here's everything we believe is compromised or has been taken, right? They came out of the gate right away. It's saying, here's a breach, here's all the details we have, and here's the steps to correct this on our side and yours. It really, we should be giving LastPass a hand, because the way they've handled this is completely right. I don't think they could have done anything better, right? It's kind of, some people out there are going to say, well, they shouldn't have gotten hacked, but that's not really a good argument, right? Everyone gets hacked eventually. But the way they've handled this so far has just been astounding. It's been fantastic.
Now I'm reading this, and they're saying with the way the salt is. So salt is just random noise that's added to your password. They can't use a rainbow table, right? They would have to actually try different passwords.
It would make it harder. So a lot of sites will have a site-wide salt value, right? You choose the same salt across every person. And you say, yeah, this is a salt, just to lengthen the hash. So you would have to have a rainbow table dedicated to that specific application or that specific website. They're having a per user salt, which means if you want to attack a certain user, you have to have that salt plus the rainbow table for each user you're attacking. It makes things, if you're creating rainbow tables to try to break their password database, it makes things terribly annoying, right? Which is the entire objective in stored password security, is trying to make the cracking process as annoying as humanly possible. So
because you have the password, then it's hashed so many times, and then let's start out. Because you have a really strong password, that was the whole design of it. So you're looking at greater than 16, 24, 32 characters. Remember, you only have to type in this password once. You're hashing it as a per user hash. And now someone not only needs to know your username, because they need that salted hash, they need to guess your password. And what that's saying is there's no reason. You're not really in trouble, unless your password is really small, and then we would definitely recommend it. But the even better part is this doesn't work if you use two-factor authentication.
Right. That doesn't protect the blobs themselves. It just protects access to your account. But if what they said is accurate and none of the blobs were stolen, only the hashed password database, they've got to break two-factor authentication as well. So really crazy secure. There's no reason to worry. And frankly, this gives me a little bit more faith in LastPass. Because yes, they were hacked. Yes, the hashed passwords got leaked, but it goes to show that they built everything properly. And in the case that you're building things properly, in the event that you do get hacked, your users have a really decent amount of time to fix things on their end by changing passwords before anything bad happens.
And I mean, what they did is annoying. They're telling everyone they reset everyone's password if something. They didn't reset on everyone. I still have not gotten a thing to reset. I got the email.
Right. They recommend resetting your master password. I don't know if they're forcing anyone to, but it is a recommendation that you change your master password.
I mean, I'll give you a little dirty secret here. My dad called me up in a panic saying, what am I going to do? And I said, you know what? If they're forcing you to reset the password, put in the same password. I know his LastPass password. It is very strong. I am not worried about it. There are other issues I'm worried about. His master password is not one of them. And the good part is I don't think LastPass checks to see if it matches the old one. So you could put in the same one.
Right. I don't think they could check it, because if they're resetting per user salt and running it through the password-based key derivation function that many times again, it's going to end up with a different hash, right?
Correct. And you know what? And so puts the same password in, and then you move on. And again, you have to remember, if you're actually concerned, then yes, change your password. It's a good time anyway to change your password. Start of summer, everything else. Change your password, you're good to go. The one thing that I didn't notice, and I do recommend listening to Security Now, and I think they're talking about it. You should be able to hear it by the time this comes out, and they're probably going to go way, way in depth, is that the only thing you really need to worry about is if your LastPass master password is the same as another password in your Facebook password, your Twitter password. Because if they crack that and you change your password, they crack that, they have it, they potentially could tie it to your username if they can figure that out.
Right.
And then they can go try Facebook, try everything else.
Yeah, this is why you do not reuse passwords, especially really important passwords. My LastPass password was used at LastPass, and that's it. And we can probably go over it now or later, but I've been trying out an open source experiment where I've been running my own sort of LastPass using only open source technology. But yeah, the way I still recommend LastPass wholeheartedly. They did everything correct in this situation.
Let's finish up for a few more minutes, and then we'll talk about what you're doing. Because the last thing I want to say is, if you're the last thing they recommend is if you're two-factor curious, now would be a perfect time.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay? And Google's been pushing it. They just changed their whole security page. LastPass obviously has been pushing it. You've been starting to hear it on the internet. You've been hearing it on your local news. Multi-factor could be as simple as your Touch ID on your iPhone or on your S5, which will almost be defaulted in Android M coming up soon. But basically, it's the code that changes every 30 seconds. And yes, it's annoying. And yes, you're going to hate it. And yes, everything. And we talked about this. But now is the best time to do it. If you're going to change your master password, you have to now think about security. You know what? Try some two-factor. It won't hurt you. It will definitely make you mad for at least a week or two, and then you'll understand.
It's really one of the best things you can do as far as internet account security, hands down.
And then I had a question for Tom right before we started, and I think this is very important. On the bottom of their blog post, there is a website, lastpass.com/revert.php. When you click on it, the question was, I reset my master password, but now I can't get in. And remember, we keep on saying LastPass has no idea what your password is. If you can't get it by the hint, you may be out of luck. So I see this and I'm scared. And Tom reassured me, so I'll let him explain it.
Right. So the fear is, so there's lastpass.com/revert, and then lastpass.com/recover. So what this is you can revert a LastPass master password change. Now, this sounds terrifying. Wait a minute. How can I revert my LastPass password if they don't know my LastPass password? Technically, they're not supposed to know anything about the data I have here or the password I used to get in. How on earth are they reverting it? And it's not really going back in time. If you look at this page, and if you look at it carefully, it says, hey, look, if you choose to revert, you will lose any site that has been added since your most recent password change. What they're doing is they are recovering an old backup, because LastPass does back data up. Right? That's why you have your LastPass history. That's why you can recover your account. They're just saying, hey, we're just going to take one of the old backups we have and bring it forward. And when you try to log in, what will happen with your old password, you'll try to log in with it, and it'll try to log in to each and every blob subsequently, going backwards in time, back in their backup database, and find one that unlocks properly. And that becomes your new password database. That becomes your new blob that they hand you. And then they just get rid of the ones that don't work, that don't match. Now, again, the key to that is that anything that has happened forward in time since that point, since that backup that you can now log into, is gone. and that's a good thing.
Now, do you think that they got all these password hashes as well?
I don't see why they would need to. It's really easy. Again, I don't work for LastPass. I don't know exactly how they have this stuff built in the back end. But it would be really easy to write a script to try to log into one of the backups and then pick one of them.
That's my exact thing. That's exactly what I'm thinking. You're
Right.
gonna try the hashes, your password hashes, and I would, if the blobs are dated by any time code, I would go back, I don't know, 3 years and see, well, Target, Anthem, LinkedIn, all these,
Right.
and see if I can get something simple. But you know what? If LastPass did it right, they probably didn't have any time dates to it. They just probably have the blob, and they'll go from there.
Right. I imagine that they're not keeping any sort of old hashes around, and they have been responsible in just about everything here in their blog post and the way they've handled this situation. They should and probably would have told us if they were keeping old hashes around. I don't believe they were, but I don't have any proof. So take that with a grain of salt.
And then the last tip, if your password hint is not good, change that as well. You may want, if your password hint is the password is, absolutely change your password.
Right. And by password hints not being good, they mean if it's even slightly sort of hinting towards what the password might be to anyone except yourself, change it. Those password hints, I don't use them. I have a password manager and I keep the most important password in my head. And that's the password that unlocks the password manager.
And the example is let's say if you have a common password and somebody else has a common password, technically the hashes would be the same. Now they're not because of the per user salt, but if you can get the password hint from somebody else and go from there, then you're also messed up.
Right.
So the example was, I don't know, a few years ago, again, on the Security Now podcast, the password hint was rhymes with ass word. And obviously we know what that was. And if your password was also password and the hashes matched up, we now know what it was.
Right. So yeah, don't reuse passwords, and please make lie in your password hints and lie in your secret answers and secret questions.
So, okay, we got 7 minutes to discuss what you've been trying.
Okay, so what I've been trying, and this is not at all, and please don't get this mixed up, because so I got an email. I got an email that said, "Hey, Tom, your LastPass Premium is expiring," and it's $12 per year, right? That's $1 a month. That's nothing. I spend more on lunch every day.
You do have to prepay, so it does hurt. You do have to prepay,
but so that's 2 days. That's less than 2 days of me going out to eat for lunch. All right, it's $12 up front. You're good for the year. I think it's a good deal. They sent me the email and I said, I really wonder if I can do a LastPass sort of thing, but only using open source software and controlling it all myself, right? Having an own cloud server that I keep some documents up in, putting a KeyPass database up there, and then syncing it down to each of my machines and my phone. I wonder if I could do that. So I tried it, and I took my LastPass database, exported it to a CSV, imported that to KeyPass, shredded, securely deleted the CSV, and then I locked up the KeyPass database with a really cool, awesome new password. And then I put that in OwnCloud and had it synchronized to all of my devices and machines. OwnCloud is kind of like an open source Dropbox. It's pretty cool, kind of technical, and slightly buggy, so I don't recommend it to those outside of the tech sector yet. Good news, it is working. The bad news is it's kind of complicated, and the Firefox add-on takes a little bit of hassle to get working, but when it works, it's awesome, and it works the vast majority of the time after you've set it up. So just like LastPass, it just fills in password boxes. It does a pretty good job of it, and it requires me to log into KeePass, which is another program running on my computer, to get access to the passwords. KeePass is a fantastic password manager, totally open source. They do fantastic work. The interface isn't great. It's not awful, but it's definitely a toy for power users and people more concerned with security. LastPass, awesome security, definitely made for being easy to use, right? It's made for everyone. KeePass doesn't really have that concern. Like most open source software, it's a little rough around the edges.
If you're afraid of the cloud,
right? If you're
the answer.
Yeah, if you're afraid of the cloud, if you don't want to trust your passwords to anyone except yourself and the stuff you control, KeePass is your answer. You can even give it, an awesome master password and a key file, a file that you have to have that has to be exactly that file, plus your password to unlock it. You can only use a key file, but that's if someone breaks into your system and they steal your key file and your database, which they're going to, you lose all the security. So keep the key file around, but not in the same place, and use a password with it.
And look, I've used KeePass way before LastPass came out. I don't have that much stuff that I really have to worry about. I really do like this LastPass secure notes to have it with me on my phone and everything else. And you know what? We've had 2 LastPass semi-breaches, if you want to call it that. Both times they did everything perfect, and I haven't heard anything that said, "Oh, my security was compromised in any way."
Right. So I did not move to KeePass because of this breach. Right. I moved to KeePass a couple days before the breach. Now, after the breach, I wanted to see, because I had all my passwords, everything was working in KeePass. I had no data to lose on LastPass. I wanted to see if I could deactivate or even delete, if I could just blow up my LastPass account. So I logged in, and sure enough, right there after you authenticate, in your My Account section, there's a thing that says delete my account with a bunch of warnings all over it saying, hey, we can't get it back. When we say delete, we mean delete. We mean exploded in a bomb and it's gone. Totally gone. There's nothing you can do to get it back. So I hit delete. And then later that day, my wife was angry with me because all of the LastPass shares from my account to her account that I had given her were just gone. So the deletion works perfectly and exactly how you hoped it would work. I wholly recommend LastPass, but if you don't want to trust a website with your credentials, KeePass is a great alternative.
Like I said, I use KeePass. It is very rough around the edges. It works great, and that is, I think, the de facto standard by the people who absolutely want nothing to do with the cloud. But for everyone else, including Steve Gibson, he loves LastPass, and like I said, and there are others. I mean, we just talk about LastPass. There's Dashlane, Authy, but we haven't really looked at them because you know what? LastPass does it all for us. And yes, it's a little, the GUI is not exactly there, but you know what? For $12 a year to get it on your phone and have the thumbprint work with it and everything else, it's a lifesaver.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, that's it. If you have any other questions, leave it, put them in the comments. We'll hear them. We'll try and get back to you. We'll post them to see what we can get. But I think the best thing to do is when you hear that LastPass was hacked and the world's gonna end, I think you should tell people, no, that's not what happened, and try to explain to them the actual truth so they can rest their fears that password managers are in fact the better use than putting them just keeping the same password or reusing everything all the same.
Right. And you know, there's a danger to keeping your password manager on the internet, right? There's a danger to trusting an external service that's going to be targeted with your passwords. But the bigger danger in all of this is not using a password manager at all. So if you're the kind of guy who can get away with using KeePass and keeping it on your own boxes and keeping it all off the internet, by all means, do it. But if your grandmother needs a password manager, LastPass is really attractive. It's a fantastic option, and frankly, it's really the easiest thing out there to use. So I wholly recommend it.
So, okay, that's it for our show this week, and we will see you next week. Bye, everyone.
See you guys.
Trying to stop.